Welcome to Dairyland Frights, the paranormal podcast that covers everything spooky, creepy, and mysterious in the Midwest and beyond. And my guest today is Loren Purcell, the Mystic Chick. And welcome, Loren.
Happy to be here.
Great. We are happy to have you here. So, can I read your bio to my spooky friends? I don't need a topic today, I was telling her. She's got so many cool things. You're going to love her, and you're going to obviously go give her some love and check her out, and her websites and all her great stuff, because wow, you're blowing me away. It's so awesome, all the great things you're doing. One of the things I found out that you offer paranormal exploration tours of historic places. I'm a history nerd. Sounds like you're a history nerd, if that's okay if I use that word. I love being a history nerd. Now, you are in Illinois, and you've done past explorations, and we'll talk about each one here in a little bit, like the Woodstock Open Opera House, Woodstock Old Country Sheriff's House, Starline Factory in Harvard, Oakland Cemetery, and the Mount Tabor Cemetery. So it's a nice mix. And not only that, as she explored these great places, because I'm a big cemetery guy and I love history and cemeteries, she has been featured on the cover of Northwest Herald for her tours of the Dole Mansion in Crystal Lake. Well, we got to talk about that too. And not only, she's won awards. Guess what, folks? She won the Shaw Media's Best of Fox 22 and 2023 in the Just for Fun category, which we do this just for fun here on Dairyland Frights. I love it. Another question I have for you, because there's so much here, is you're an energy empath, and you have basically been called upon to investigate hauntings and other energetic disturbances in homes of all sizes, including, holy smokes, Loren, a 15,000 square foot historical mansion. Another topic we got to talk about.
Yeah, that's a story.
Yes, we'll talk about that, as well as potential issues for those looking, which is hilarious to me, and people don't understand this, is new homes. So everyone thinks, just a quick tangent, everyone thinks when you move in a new home, it's a new home, right? It's a without thing. And we'll talk about that, because I just got to keep giving you the platitudes and keep going on here, because there's so much that I got to get to. She's not only done all those great things, my spooky friends, but she has been on Coast to Coast AM, as well as several radio stations in the Chicagoland area, as a subject matter expert on ghosts and the afterlife. And wow, do you have time, Loren? She also has a podcast covering a wide range of mystical, mysterious topics called Happy Hour with the Mystic Chick. I want to go to Happy Hour with the Mystic Chick. Let's be honest. That sounds like a fun time, right, Loren?
Yeah.
And obviously, it's available on all, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I have been listening to it. I love it. I haven't listened to all your episodes, but I will. They're great. I love it. And then, last but not certainly least, in her addition to role as a liaison to the paranormal, Loren has, I love that, by the way, liaison to the paranormal, I love that, has spent the last 25 years achieving wholeness, balance, and closure. She holds a BA and MA in psychology and is an associate of the American Psychological Association as a positive, psychologically based life coach, which is awesome. Love to talk about that too. She helps people reconnect with their passions to make a transformative change. And she is available for personal consultations, public speaking events, and parties. So, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So let's start just really quickly, because I always have to have an origin story. What made you get into the paranormal? I mean, because obviously you have a quite extensive educational experience, but it would be easy, just kind of a side note too, is the paranormal, I feel, because I had a paranormal, she's a therapist, but also she's a paranormal therapist. And I think those two are totally different, but really needed in today's world, because the paranormal can really affect you. You see a ghost, maybe you were touched by a ghost or whatever. But what I want to know is how Loren started out. Like, were you a little kid and saw a ghost and that just, bam, I knew it? Tell me about that.
It's a little dark. No, I had a near-death experience when I was around 2. I was actually living in Roswell, New Mexico at the time. And after that, I just started seeing energy around all kinds of things like trees. And then the energy kind of expanded to hearing things, seeing things, feeling things. And I just feel like after that kind of brush with death, that door was then never like fully closed. Like I always have like one foot in that dimension. And so it was just like the most amazing feeling. Like even now it's just like coming home. Like it was so incredible and there's nothing to fear. And it was just, I think that's like part of why I do this work is to kind of like share that with people, like convey that like, death is not something to be afraid of. It's another phase. And just there's a lot of like interplay between the dimensions and between ghosts and spirits and us. So I had a near-death experience when I was around 2. And it kind of, it was like, even now I still remember it being this like the most amazing experience. And it really did feel like coming home. Like it was amazing. And so like after that, I just started seeing energy around things. And then that kind of expanded to hearing things, seeing things, feeling things. I can feel people's emotions. I can feel people's physical problems. Like if somebody has, say, a brain tumor, I can feel just if somebody died, I can feel like how they died or like what got pierced in a car accident or things like that. I see things in my head. I can see like little video snippets. I can hear things. Like it really depends on the person and like if they're dead or not and how they died. But yeah.
So does that have to do with you being an energy empath, or explain that? What's the difference between an empath and an energy empath versus a medium or mystic? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm a medium. I'm a psychic medium because I get my information psychically. And I'm also an energy empath. So like when I basically like everybody has the ability to, everybody has an internal dowsing system in their bodies, but they're just a lot of times not completely connected to it. I've just like really worked with mine and like refined it over time. And so I can walk into a building and find out like, using my body, if there's issues with the place itself, if it's a ghost, if it's a spirit, if it's a water leak, if it's something else, if somebody killed themselves somewhere, I can feel all that.
Wow. And you said you got that at a very young age, correct?
Mm-hmm. And the near-death experience, I think, just kind of kept that door open.
Yeah. So when you were growing up with that, did you let your parents know or people around you know, or did you just kind of keep it a secret?
No, I mean, grew up Catholic. So in a weird way, Catholicism is like, it's a barrier, but it's also like a portal because like we believe in saints, we believe in angels, like glow in the dark rosaries, and like nothing was really like, a surprise. So, and it also ran in my family, like on my mother's side. So like my grandmother was a medical intuitive. My mother has like prophetic dreams. My sister's got stuff. So just comes out differently.
Do you ever find it to be like when you walk into, let's say, someone's house, do you ever like start feeling things like maybe someone died in the house or maybe there's spirits in the house? Does anything like that happen to you?
Yeah. Well, okay. So like the sensing energy, like energy could be from like a ghost or a spirit, or it could be from negative energy, like from the land itself or from the house. Like I have a Substack where I write about all this, and I actually talked about the different reasons why, like, energy can be negative. I've talked about why some places are ghost magnets and things like that. But so you could walk into a place and you could feel off because there is like an actual haunting or because there's a negative energy situation that causes other things of the same frequency to kind of attract themselves. So like, you'll have a lot of like health issues there. People who move into a negative energy place will like maybe lose their job, go through a divorce, all those things. And then it also opens the door for negative entities to kind of find themselves in locations like that as well. And those are the problematic kind of energies that like feed off of people.
Yeah. So I have 2 follow-up questions for that because I've talked to other mediums and paranormal investigators. One, Do you believe in demons or lost souls? What do you believe?
There's both. So
Really?
demons are actually part of the category of just negative entities. So negative entities are anything that has never been human, will never be human, feeds off of emotional pain, physical pain, causing drama. So like Catholics kind of gave that whole demon kind of moniker to, and demonologists will like break down different types of negative entities basically that feed off of very specific situations. But yeah, but lost souls are just, I would categorize lost souls really as ghosts because they are, bound to a person, place, or thing. They have either unfinished business or went through something traumatic or, there's some reason that's keeping them there. And so they're lost because they haven't crossed over.
Yeah. So why do ghosts stay? Right? Why would you stay? Let's say you're going to haunt Loren. Let's say you're going to haunt your house, right? Would you be the type of ghost to mess with people, like move stuff around? Or would you be the type of ghost who would just kind of like pop up at 3 a.m. and just be like, ha ha, I'm a full body apparition. Check me out.
It depends on how the person died. That's going to be how they present as a ghost. So, I think I heard one of your other podcasts I don't remember the term you were using, but kind of the ones that are on a time loop that just kind of show up at a certain time of night or whatever, they're kind of going through the motions. Residual, yeah. So, it really depends. So like if somebody got cheated on and they are really angry and spiteful, they vow before they die that they are going to haunt that person for the rest of their lives kind of thing and make their lives miserable. They will be more interactive than say somebody who may have died a traumatic death, who may be just like going through a loop, like a set of experiences and then just kind of replaying it over and over. Those are harder to reach to get to go to the light because they're just so ingrained. The other issue is like if somebody died because they were, say, murdered. I have a really bad story about this girl. We were doing explorations in the Dole Mansion. And the Dole Mansion had a lot more land originally in the years. And so the cemetery that they ended up giving to the town was part of their land. And so there was this girl who apparently died in the cemetery. And she actually like presented on our first big tour. And it turns out, like I found out after the fact, that it was the actual anniversary of her death. But she died in that cemetery that was attached to that land, and she actually burned alive. And so they said, 18-year-old girl, it was horrible. Still brings tears to my eyes. The first person to pick up on her was actually the wife of a firefighter. So it was just the situation where she wasn't ready to go. They ruled her death as suicide. And like how many women, I have a minor in criminal justice. I went through methods of death. I wanted to be a profiler. There are not many women in history that have ever killed themselves by setting themselves on fire, but there are a ton of men who have set women on fire. And so they ruled her death a suicide because she was kind of a transient. She had just come to the area a few months before. She was in an alternative high school, so like troubled girl, She didn't get the justice that she deserved. Her own parents didn't even claim her, like report her missing or claim her. It came from like a friend of a friend from another state that called it in or something. Horrible situation, but yeah. So she is not going to leave until her death has been, until her death's been justified, until she gets justice. And one of the other tours we did through there, a different day, we had like people holding dowsing rods and stuff because we do pendulum work, dowsing rods, all kinds of stuff. And this woman, we kept going room to room and her dowsing rods kept pointing to me. And by like the third room, I'm like, something's off. Like that shouldn't be happening. So I started talking with her and it turned out she was a homicide detective. And so it was Heather kind of reaching out, like, please talk to this woman. And so I talked to her and she's like, well, I am, but like, I'm a homicide detective like an hour away. Like that wouldn't do any good, And I'm like, well, where do you live? And she's like, oh, like 2 blocks away.
Oh.
So
there you go.
She still recognized that maybe this person could help her. So, so she's not going to go to the light and I keep trying to tell her story, Heather Potter, in case anybody knows anything, but yeah.
Yeah. That's just fascinating to me because I know some ghosts are scared You know what I
Mhm.
mean? To go to that, especially children. I think that's very sad. There's been many instances I've heard, read about, and interviewed people where they had a child where they just sensed the child was scared. Like, where's my mom and my dad? You know, they died maybe like when they were 6 or 7, tuberculosis or something, right? Spanish
It's
flu,
something.
whatever it was, right? Something horrible. The 1800s, by the way, were some of the I would not want to live in the 1800s. It seemed like every other day you were basically like, here comes a disease and here comes whatever. But
I actually wrote a post on that. Why are there so many ghosts from the 1800s? And I ran down all the reasons why, all the diseases, the wars, like all the stuff.
all
Yeah,
right, it's crazy. It's like
it's crazy.
literally you wake up and you go, because we wake up and you're a positive person, obviously telling people be positive affirmations and stuff. You're like, well, today you can have a great day. But literally in the 1800s, it was like, I'm alive.
Yeah, it's pretty much
By
it.
5 o'clock, 5 o'clock you may not be, but who knows? So let's talk about, you talked about divining methods. What mostly do you use, Loren? Do you use tarot, scrying, spirit guides? You talked about divining rods, but what else methods do you use?
Well, it really depends on the situation. So, like, I'll do mediumship sessions as well. So, like, I work with like people one on one. I work with groups. When I'm doing things one on one, it's a little bit different. I use a pendulum. I use different oracle cards, crystals. It really depends on the situation. Runes. I end up sitting with the person who passed before I meet with the person who scheduled the appointment. So I'll have my own appointment with that person who passed. And then I'll bring my notes from that session and then we'll delve into, because there's always a reason why the dead person wants the live person to see me, because it's about their life. It's not about the person who passed. So the person who passed is concerned about something that the person who's alive is going through. And that's why that happens. But when I'm working with groups, it depends on the situation. So like if it's an inside kind of thing, I like divining rods. When we do tours, I actually have crystal pendulums that like everybody gets and they get to take home. And so I'm like a rock hound. So like they're all like just different ones and they pick them intuitively. And then we kind of go around and like talk about that for a while. It's kind of like half workshop, half exploration, because I'll explain how energy works, how to, work with different things, and then how to program the pendulums. And then we kind of take those and dowsing rods. If we're in cemeteries, I like EMF detectors a lot because especially when it gets dark, they light up so you can kind of see if somebody's getting activity somewhere. You can, But the thing that I make sure to tell people is that everybody's resonating at a different frequency based on a lot of different factors. So like your health, your biology, what you're going through in your life, your job, all that stuff plays a role into like what vibrational frequency you're at. So when you are kind of on a tour, you're going to attract certain things that somebody else may not. And so you can have somebody standing there, their pendulum's going nuts, and somebody will be like, oh my God, that's so cool. I want that. Like they go stand there and nothing. And so it's because they're just at a different frequency. And doing the crystal pendulums kind of like shows from the get-go, like what their frequency is kind of at that moment.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and that's what every medium talks about. And it's kind of funny is I always mention that I'll meet a person and we'll just hit it off, like we'll just have a great time, and then I'll meet other people and I can give them $1 million and they wouldn't like me. And we got to talk about that, right? Like there's that, and you probably would agree with this. If not, please tell me. It's your frequency. Like you're not. It's kind of like two magnets. When you do all the magnets and the poles, kind of. It's kind of similar to that. And I'm just fascinated with that because they talk about you have your aura or your frequencies that come out, and sometimes they're just not, how do you say, complementary to one another, right? I mean,
right.
And that's in the spirit world too, right? That's why maybe a ghost is being, I don't want to say nicer, but whatever you want to say. And then the other people, their hair is being pulled, they're being scratched or whatever because of that.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? What do you think?
I mean, it's not just about whether somebody's nice or mean. It just is the frequency that they're at. And so like a lot of times when spirits or ghosts connect from the other side when I'm working with people, it's because of common factors, commonalities, and that those common factors resonate at the same frequency. So like if you are around the same age, if you like worked the same job, if you came from the same hometown, like different things will kind of have them connect with you.
Yeah, that's just fascinating to me. I just think it's just really interesting. Also, I always tell mediums, my mom could meet someone and immediately, not to say they're good or evil, and she was never judgmental, but she'd always like I'd be dating a girlfriend and she'd be like, nah, not gonna work. Just miss, and I'd be like, Mom, how do she just said hi, whatever. And my mom was always right, always right. She could tell. I'm just going to be generic, a good or bad person. She just had that feeling and she gave it to me. And when I tell my wife that, she goes, you're always being judgmental, but I'm always right too. And my wife always she just shakes her head at me. She goes,
are you a
Right.
Cancer?
Yeah. And it's weird because I don't feel like I have a sensitive or whatever you want to say, empath or whatever. It's just, I just get that frequency, that vibration, and just, I can't explain it. But I've never been wrong. And it's weird. It's as weird.
Yeah.
And it's, but it's fascinating to me, right? It's just like, and we're all born with the skills, right, Loren? We just need to kind of push them out one way or another to be educated how to use them.
Well, I mean, sort of, because sometimes, like, if you're a fire sign, sometimes there's a blockage because you have to give up a certain amount of control to kind of interact with those other frequencies and then whatever energies. So fire signs are kind of on lockdown. Like Another one too is like people who are extremely psychically sensitive may go on lockdown. So like a Scorpio or a Pisces or something who may be extremely open to it. It's almost like a defense mechanism. Like they will not allow anything to get through. It kind of depends. And like anybody I liken it to like basketball. Like anybody can play basketball. Not everybody's going to be in the NBA,
Yeah. That's a great way. That's a great way to explain that. And I just find it fascinating. People like yourself who have developed this skill through years of practice and learning and everything, and you've been able to develop why other people maybe they can't. For whatever reason, like you said, there's certain things that block it, or maybe they're not putting in their effort, or whatever that may be the reason. So let me ask you this. Can you share a time when you were, I don't know, maybe you're sitting at a location, maybe you're talking to a person that you were generally frightened? Like you just knew there was something wrong. And what did you do? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a weird one because I actually wasn't physically at the location. So like, hi dog. So like I will do like even, oh my God, if somebody thinks they have a ghost in their house or something, I can do them over Zoom also. I can do them over the phone because it's all energy. So like as long as I like tune into somebody's energy, it's like opening the phone line or something. I don't know, I get it. So somebody had reached out to me that was part of a paranormal group that the guy was really worried because there was a girl, like a ghost girl, and she was bound to a school and they were going to raise the school because they were going to put in some sort of like housing development or something. And he was really, really worried, like what's going to happen to this girl? She's kind of stuck there and they'd already had a team out and it wasn't going anywhere. And I kind of like started asking some questions and I'm like, okay, well, is there, because I was like getting some weird energy about it. And I'm like, I may come out there, I may not, but like, I need to get more information first. And so it was like, well, has there been like any other problems in that area? Because he said something like, oh, the girl died in a car accident in front of the school. Like the car hit a tree in front of the school or something. Okay. And she was maybe like 12 or 13, I think. And so then he admitted that there were other car wrecks after that in that same spot. And then he talked about how the school at one point had burned down. And then I'm like, really? And then he's like, well, more than once. And I'm like, okay, hold on a minute. This may be like a negative energy situation. So then I started asking more questions like, well, is there like any other like problematic stuff around town, like in that area? And he's like, oh, there's a lot of drug activity. There were just a lot of like things that weren't adding up for me. And this guy, I guess, was like seeing this girl in the basement of the school. He was a custodian or something. And I'm like, I don't know if the person that you're seeing is actually that girl. I'm like, because I'm like, what happened to your team? Like, why, and he said that like everybody, just had a really rough time with it. And that the psychic that was part of the team, when they got back from that, his cancer came back. So I'm sitting there going, I'm not going out there, but so I had him like send me a bunch of photos. I had him take a picture of like every door. There were like 14 and, doors and big area. And I was able to, like, from the photos, identify what door was connected to the area that this being was, in. And it turns out it was a negative entity that was posing as a ghost, which happens. And that's like the worst, really awful. And it was appearing to this guy who was actually very psychically sensitive, but had never dealt with it. And it was coming out sideways. And so he was like ungrounded, open, vulnerable, and that thing was just latching on. And so, yeah, it was just, I'm like, that girl is not there. Like, do not engage with that thing. Like, just let them raise that property. Icky.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about that too, because a lot of people say that demons disguise themselves as little girls. You know what I mean? Like for example, the Sally house in Kansas, there's a little girl in there, and many people believe that little girl is actually a demon. So, I mean, do you think that's possible? Do you think demons would do that, or a lost soul or something to kind of disguise themselves to trick you? And then when you get close is when they, whatever they would do, horrible things to you, possess you, or whatever you want to say.
Yeah. So a lost soul, like being a ghost, is not going to hurt you. Okay. Ghosts cannot hurt you. Spirits can't hurt you. Only negative entities, AKA demons, can hurt you. They can attach to you. The negative entities are the things that can bind themselves to you. They can drive you insane. They can drive you to kill someone else. They can drive you to kill yourself. And if you die, and somebody else is in that vicinity, it can bind to the next person. So that is classic kind of like how a demon would behave, but it's not relegated to just the classic Catholic kind of viewpoint of demons.
Interesting. I read somewhere this by the chief, I guess I'll say chief exorcist in the Catholic Church. He said that about over 90% of cases he's gone on where he had to perform an exorcism, it has turned out to be some type of mental issue, something to that effect. But anywhere from, I think it was like 2 to 3% where he could not explain. And somebody mentioned this to me, and I thought this was kind of interesting. Think about that for a second. You have 200 people, right? And let's say 180 of them are just having issues. There's still 20 people who need an exorcist. Loren, do you believe that? Is that crazy? Or am I crazy saying that?
It's not crazy because it's a totality of circumstances. So you have to have the negative energy location. You have to have the person who's primed to be vulnerable. And I actually wrote a post on like all the ways somebody is vulnerable to kind of like seeing ghosts and spirits and experiencing other types of interactions that wouldn't normally. And it's all kinds of things. Like you just went through a surgery, you went through a divorce, you got, you lost your job, like, you lost someone you're grieving. There's all these things that can cause you to be kind of like your frequencies pushed down, and it leaves you open to all sorts of weird crap. But so it's possible.
Yeah, that just blows my mind.
Yeah.
Do you think
again, the exorcism thing though, like and this is the weird thing with like negative entities. It's partly like culturally perceived. So like whatever culture you come from, the negative entity is going to present in a way that's familiar in a scary way to you. So, if you're Native American, that may look way different than the classic demon from Catholicism. But it's just it exists, and but the other thing is, like, you don't always need an exorcism unless you're like in that faith and in that culture and you feel like that's going to help relieve it. But honestly, it can be like very easily kind of, I don't know, dislodged. The bigger issue is not the demon or the negative entity attachment. It is, why are you so vulnerable to it? And if you don't deal with the why, you could get rid of this thing and another thing will just latch right on.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's fascinating to me how that can, and it can change so quickly, right? You could be having a good life, and then as life happens, it just terrible things happen, and there's no really way to know when that's going to happen.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is, like, a bad thing happens to somebody, and then say they get a divorce, and then they have to move. And then they immediately buy a new house. And I tell people, do not do that ever. Like, rent for a while, like, until your energy regulates again, because you could be drawn to a negative energy location and it will feel comfortable and homey and welcoming, and it will just suck the life out of you. So you got to recalibrate before, because you don't know what you're going to end up in.
Wow, I love that. I've never heard of that before. That makes total sense, Loren. Yeah, it makes total sense.
Yeah, it's all energy.
I love it. I love that.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this. So when you get your messages, per se, I'll just use messages as a generic term from a spirit or whatever, how do you know and ensure that they're clear and authentic?
I haven't had that question before. Okay, so I don't know if this is exactly answering the question or not, but like, when I do mediumship sessions, especially, somebody will be wanting to connect with a particular person, but sometimes that person isn't ready to come through, and somebody else senses the opportunity because the person's open and waiting, and they will like push in front of the line. And you can kind of tell that it's not the person that they were trying to connect with. And then we have to go through a bunch of stuff around that. Like, if it's the pushy, grandmother who was like, really worried about them, even though they died 10 years ago, like if they had a bigger voice back when they were alive, even if the grandfather passed in the last year, if he was the quiet one in the relationship, she may still push forward and be like, no, like, you got to deal with this. So yeah. Opinions, lots of them.
Yeah. And then with that, how do you validate the information, right? Because it's easy to get, I don't want to say mixed messages, if that's the right word, but you know what I mean? Someone's well, it's your grandma and she wants to, and then someone goes, well, wait a minute, I don't think that's right, like when you ask the spirit, basically, validating that information so you're not going down, I don't know, bringing something in that may be negative. Maybe it's not grandma. Maybe it's something attached to this person that's now saying, here's my opportunity. Thanks, Loren.
Yeah, no, I can sense that. I would know right away if something was attached to someone or if it was something not right. We go through a whole process when I'm working with people, and I use a pendulum so we can kind of like zone in on like who is coming through, and like, is it the person or is it somebody else? And then we kind of like narrow that down. But if somebody had like an attachment or like some sort of like negative entity situation, that's handled completely differently, and that's nothing to mess with.
Yeah, obviously. And one of the other biggest things in your field, in our field of the paranormal and supernatural, if you want to say, is a lot of skepticism and doubt, right? Yeah, sure, Loren. Yeah, yeah, I get you. Whatever. It's this place ain't haunted. It's the bad pipes. It's whatever. How do you get past that? Like, you must have people go, Loren, give me my money back, or if you charge money, I don't know if you do, but if you do, you know what I mean? Like, hey, give me my money back. You're full of it.
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
Yeah, that doesn't really come up. But
okay.
I take my craft very seriously. I do consider myself a liaison to the paranormal, the ghosts, the spirits. They are, they have thoughts and feelings too, and they need to be, respected. So it's a two-pronged answer, because some people will not experience ghost activity. Again, it's a frequency thing. So you can have two people living in a house or more, And you can have one or several of the people experiencing the ghost activity and somebody else going, everything's been fine. I don't know what you're talking about. And it's just because they're just not, at that level. And so again, it goes back to, all right, to the people who are seeing the ghost, like, why is this? We need to like drill down on, like, are you going through something, like, because there's two camps. There's the people who have seen ghosts like forever, and that's just kind of in their makeup and whatever. And then there's a lot of people that tend to see ghosts that don't normally see ghosts. And that's when you've got to start analyzing the situation.
Yeah. I get skeptics and everything, and it's good to have a skeptic, right? So you're not just believing everything you see on YouTube. Like, oh, there's this.
Right.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Because that ruins it for people like me and you who are really trying to help people. And then someone who's just wants clicks and views or whatever, makes something fake, right?
I mean, that gives me the X. But no, I mean, there are skeptics out there. There's just, and I go back to the zodiac, but I mean, like the earth signs, especially a Capricorn is probably going to be a skeptic. Like that doesn't surprise me. There are just some people who are more open to it, some people who are more like realists. And I kind of like work it back to quantum physics as much as I can, because again, it's just energy, and, everything vibrates with energy, and there's consciousness and everything. And so whether you're in this dimension or a different dimension, it's just the nature of the universe.
Yeah. And that's fascinating to me. I had a guest on, her name is Aurora from Blood Milk Moon Astrology, and she's, talking to me about all this stuff and the houses and the signs and all this stuff. And it's just, I love it. It's really interesting because I'm a Taurus, by the way. And she was going through other things, and I just found it just absolutely amazing and fascinating to go through that and learn about it. And, she made it clear, like, again, horoscopes in your daily newspaper, just for fun, there's science behind this. There's things you can actually do that are not what you think. It's just someone sitting behind a crystal ball at some Ren fair, doing it. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? That's for fun, whatever. It's $20 or whatever you paid. It's still, you're having fun, but who knows? Sometimes there are people there who really want to help you and really have the skills like yourself or going through that. The other thing too is, have you ever had a time where the person, you investigated a house and there's nothing going on, but there's just something you notice with the person? Like maybe they have some type of mental challenge, and that's a tough one, right? To explain to that person who's like, no, Loren, there's ghosts, there's demons, there's this. And you're like, oh boy, how do I?
Okay, so wait. So like the question is,
like someone who would be more, you're not feeling anything. You go into a house that someone has brought you into saying there's a demon, and they're or lost soul, they're driving me crazy. They're doing this, that. Yeah. And you're not feeling it. You're not getting anything. And you feel maybe this person is schizophrenic, bipolar, something that's more mental than unfortunately spiritual or whatever.
Right. And that happens. Not very often, actually, that I've dealt with. But I kind of present that situation that, I'm not getting anything, and then I start to kind of like turn it back on them and like, what are you going through right now? And like, the psychologist in me kind of starts to push forth and, try to figure out how I can connect that person with the resources to get them the help they need. Because again, I'm not a licensed psychologist to practice, therapy on people, but I am a psychologist and I can recognize how to connect people with things.
Yeah. And that's a tough one, right? Because that person has spent maybe years in that house feeling that something is driving them maybe to do certain things that you're like, wow, how do I tell them that it really isn't, that you need help, and let me help you. Let me put you in touch with the right people, right?
Well, and sometimes they don't want to be helped. Like if they recognize they have a mental health condition and they're not taking their meds, if they are an alcoholic, like there are certain things that your hands are tied.
Yeah. So that brings me to, have you ever encountered sleep paralysis? And that is very, right? That's different in the sense of you're having sleep paralysis and boy. I sleep paralysis once, and I had this just terrible time of seeing this evil force trying to take me. And I'm like, I don't want to go through that again. And some people go through that again. Do you have any experience in that or feelings about sleep paralysis?
I mean, obviously, as a psychologist, I know it exists. I haven't dealt with it personally. Now, that's not to say I haven't experienced my share of nightmares, but sleep paralysis has not really been a thing for me.
Well, that's good because it's a terrible thing that
It
happens
sounds
to people.
terrible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's bad that some people have had to deal with this on a nightly basis every time they go to bed. I'm like, oh my God, that is terrible.
Well, and that's where I hear like abductions and like alien abduction stuff kind of is connected with that paralysis too.
Absolutely. So let's switch gears a little bit to the paranormal and talk about your experience in that mansion, 1,000 square foot mansion. Why don't we go through that and kind of tell me what happened and what you went through?
Okay, so like I get there and it's a historical mansion, river forest or lake forest, and gorgeous, but like, so I do numerology too, and the house number was just the number 5, just a 5, because it was so old. And 5, and I talk about in numerology, you have like, imagine a number line, you have negative numbers and you have positive numbers, and those are the frequencies. So you can have like a low number frequency that's still positive, but you can also have like a high number that's negative. So it's whatever. But when you're at 5 and you're out of balance, it's all about chaos. I call it like the snow globe number, like you're shaking everything up. So I go in there and it turns out like the wife and the husband had legal suits against each other. Everybody was seeing stuff. It took me like 8 hours to go through their place and like work with them. And they said like the last person, sorry, it's getting like sunny here. I'm getting dark. The last person that they'd had multiple people come and weigh in on these ghosts and whatever. But the last person was like, no, the demons are in the roof. And so what was their solution? They paid to replace their 15,000 square foot roof.
What?
Because of the demons. Yes. And then that didn't do it. Surprise, surprise. And then they called me. Yeah. So, that was a very interesting. And then it turned out like I identified like where they were seeing things. I was feeling it. I wasn't seeing it, but I had somebody with me who was seeing it. And then that person ended up having a mental health crisis like shortly after that. And so it kind of went back to, why are you seeing ghosts when you don't normally see ghosts? But I was able to identify where somebody killed themselves in the shower in the basement. I was able to we worked with a lot of different things. I even pinpointed like things that had gone wrong with the house that were like causing like energetic kind of ick that weren't like ghost related. But it turned out that they were like moving in a couple weeks. They like were so like done with the house. And I'm like, why are you even calling me? Why did we have to go through this?
Yeah.
Just so bizarre. The whole thing was so weird. And like every window in that entire place was painted shut. In their entire time there, they'd never opened a window. And I'm like, yeah. And so I do feng shui too. And I'm like, stagnant chi, like things aren't flowing, like, my gosh. So not healthy.
No, not healthy at all. So what is the difference between something like that and a cemetery?
In like the difference between like stuff in a house versus stuff in a cemetery?
Yeah, because in a cemetery, well, it's pretty obvious. It's death. I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, in a house, not necessarily, but it's a cemetery for a reason. There's a bunch of dead people.
Yes. Yeah. So, okay. So like that one cemetery that was attached to the Dull property, somebody died in it. So that changed the energy of the cemetery. It wasn't just a restful place. But also you have to think about like, because a ghost can bind to a person, place, or thing. If they were bound to something they were buried with, then their ghost energy is there. If something happened, after the fact in that cemetery, that could also change things. So, and again, you could have negative energy and negative entities drawn to that particular location as well. So you may think you're interacting with a ghost, but it could be something else.
Right. So like the Oakland Cemetery and the Thabar Cemetery, What made those the most interesting? Like, what did you find in each cemetery that kind of, are they famous for something, or, they're a
Yeah. Oh,
ghost?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So they're both famous. I think they're both like written up in a lot of like you can ghost hunting websites and stuff. Mount Tabor, I call it small but mighty. It's extremely old, extremely tiny, and it is like not even in use anymore. But it was used in the 1800s. And then it was like brought back in the 60s for like to bury a bunch of babies, dead babies.
Oh
So
my
like,
God.
yeah, and there's a lot of like really weird energy there that a lot of people have sensed. That is like probably that's the one that like people's cars, like you could look it up, but people's cars have stopped running and like just all kinds of like tons of orbs, like tons of stuff, mists, voices, smells, all of it. And then Oakland is several famous people buried there. Chester Gould, the writer of the Dick Tracy comics, is buried there. Johnny Stompanato Jr., who was an enforcer for the Mickey Cohen gang, is buried there. There's a large old part where there's a lot of flirty military guys. There's a Potter's Field kind of unmarked, dumped like mass grave situation there. So there's a lot of stuff. A pet cemetery, a children's mass grave from an orphanage, another children's cemetery there, a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Have you heard of Bachelor's Grove Cemetery?
Yeah, I haven't been there. I do want to go though. I've heard the activity there is insane.
Yeah, I did an episode on it, and yes, it's insane because people desecrated it. Now they have kind of a fence around it, but it's near a highway and near an interstate. It's really weird. It's like there's like a Best Buy kind of strip mall, and then there's like this cemetery, and it's got this pond. And inside the pond, there's many, many dead bodies. It used to be where the reason they call it Bachelor's Grove, maybe you know this more than I, is because bachelors were buried there. Men who never married, and so they just threw them in there. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah, and there's a famous picture, if you go and look it up, and they bury babies there too. And, believe what you want to believe, of a young woman sitting on like a bench next to a grave of, they believe, her baby. And someone took a picture of it, and if they faked it, good for them. They did a nice job, but it's famous. And you can see this woman just sitting on this bench, like her head down, like she's crying, right by the tombstone or headstone of the baby.
Oh my gosh.
The other thing, have you heard about Lincoln Park in Illinois? So yes, Lincoln Park.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard about that?
Is that the one that's like south? Or are you talking about Lincoln Park in Chicago?
In Chicago, the Lincoln Park Zoo, they call it, but there's also a park associated with it. Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. They have a mass grave of Civil War soldiers because they had prisoners, and it's right underneath the softball field. Like, people know about it. There's over 300 bodies under the softball field. And in fact, dogs have come back with like femur bones. Like, you walk. Yeah, it's insane. Because it will rain, and they've done nothing about it. They supposedly relocated the bodies, but everyone says no. It's crazy what they have there. So
I'm sure they're happy though, because like playing games is like our version now of like engaging in warfare. So like I'm sure they're just kind of like, yeah, you go. Like they're fine.
But wouldn't it be funny if your dog just came up to you and dropped like a femur bone right at you? You'd be like, yeah.
I'd really rather not. That reminds me too much of that story. I ended up finding some bone and stirring my Kool-Aid with it on like a reservation once.
What? Loren?
I was little, so I'm just like, no more bones.
Your mom's like, honey?
What is that?
What is that again? Wow.
Yeah.
So, Loren, this has been awesome. I got to have you back on again because I haven't got to half the stuff I wanted to get to. You're amazing. Like I said, I got to have you back on because I haven't got half the stuff. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me on. It was so fun talking to you. And I have like so many questions for you too. So like, I
Yeah,
would love to
we
be
gotta do a part 2 of this. But before I go, can you tell my spooky friends where they can find you and if you have anything coming up that maybe they want to check out?
Yeah, okay. So you can visit mysticchick.net. That has all of my upcoming events. That has like everything else that I'm working on, any like podcast episodes. Well, I'm rebooting my podcast. So like my episodes are old, but I've got new ones in the queue. So I write a Substack, lorenpurcell.substack.com. And it's also linked there. You can also sign up for my newsletter there. But yeah, so I've got a book in the works. I've got some other projects in the works. Got some tours that I'm scheduling in the spring. So those will be up shortly. And yeah, just a lot of stuff right now.
I love it. I love it. That's why I got to have you back on because we have so much to talk about. You have questions for me. I still have questions for you. Please, my spooky friends, go give Loren some love. All the links and everything will be when this episode comes out. She would love to help you. We even got to, I was going to ask about new homes. So she does do that. Please reach out to her if you have any questions. That's okay, Loren, if they reach out to you, any of my spooky friends I got a lot of listeners in the Illinois areas and in the Midwest. So, who knows? Maybe someone needs help or just wants to pick your brain because you have so many cool things you can talk about. So thank you.
I do that a lot.
Yes. So again, thank you so much. Loren, this was amazing. You're amazing. I love you. I'll have you back on. And before we go, always remember, stay spooky.